promoting a reasoned discourse, which is clearly lacking in this country. A reasoned discourse on the manifesto is an imperative as a prelude to any elections in a democratic society, not sex videos. And I would, of course, thank them, and I was looking forward to have this reasoned discourse with my colleague, the BERSIH National Leader, Dato' Sri Najib. Now, the thrust of our manifesto, I must say that before that, pardon I say, so I have actually decided to cancel all my engagements, as two speaking engagements in Dengkil, in Kuala Langat tonight. But I'm not in the position to cancel or postpone this debate. So this is an exception, and because I value the importance of a dialogue, a discussion, and as I alluded to earlier, a reasoned discourse. So mengusi manifesto ini adalah pernyataan hasrat. Tapi izinkan saya menyentuh satu aspek manifesto. Kita boleh melakar manifesto atau program, tetapi ianya boleh hanya dianggap serius sekiranya pembaca atau rakyat meyakini, percaya, dan ada elemen trust. Oleh demikian, berbeza dengan manifesto Barisan Nasional, pernyataan longgar, kita melakar dengan mengambil kira keyakinan rakyat, aspirasi rakyat, dan keupayaan kita sebagai kerajaan baru, kerajaan rakyat yang baru insya-Allah untuk melaksanakan. Saya juga ingin menyebut kritikan yang paling utama ialah pertama, ianya populis. Kedua, bahawa ianya tidak bertanggungjawab kerana akan membebankan, dan kalau ikut kenyataan pimpinan Barisan Nasional, akan memufliskan atau menyebabkan ekonomi negara menjadi bankrupt. Pertama, saya ingin sebut, semua manifesto, semua dasar negara mesti populis sifatnya, mesti pro rakyat, dan kita jangan bermaaf atau apologetik setiap kali dasar kita itu pro rakyat. Kita terlalu lama pro kroni dan pro kekayaan. Kita menolak populisme itu kalau ianya retorik, sekadar menarik perhatian rakyat tetapi tidak bertanggungjawab. Ya. Apa salahnya kalau dasar ekonomi itu pro rakyat, yang memenuhi cita rasa aspirasi rakyat? Apa arti kebebasan dan demokrasi kalau dasarnya itu tidak pro rakyat? Sekarang ini orang tidak kritik bahawa dasar kita itu dasar pro keluarga, pro family and crony, dan pro golongan kaya. Dan sebab itu kita harus betulkan ianya harus pro rakyat, dan di Selangor Pak sekali mengatakan merakyatkan ekonomi. Ya. Yang kedua, keupayaan. Saya percaya sudah Rafizi boleh menyambung, sekadar saya terpaksa bergeras. Tak lama di sini saya dah bagi tak izin kepada dari Amerika tadi untuk menjelaskan secara terperinci. Tetapi tiap pengumuman besar itu kita diberikan andaian kos, implikasi kos. Every specific announcement we made has taken into consideration of the cost implications. PTPTN, for example, we computed a cost of 6 billion ringgit a year in addition to the existing expenditure for education and higher education ministries. Now, to me, this is not excessive. We are not building a new township or a new tower, a new prestigious symphony orchestra building, whatever. This is a priority as far as we're concerned. I see education as a major priority in our program. Of course, we start off with the attempt to reduce the price of petroleum and gas because our accrued revenue is huge annually. We are a net exporter and not importer of oil and gas. And that is suffice to explain that we are in the capacity to then regulate, so to ease the burden of the consumers. But the main thrust of our program is again democratization of access to quality education. What do you mean by democratization of access? If the poor are deprived, if the marginalized, including the Ibans or the Kadazans in the highlands, or the Orang Asli, or those in the remote heartland among the Malays, or the poor Chinese, or the Indian estate workers, do not have the opportunity to just study, not to compete, but only to have an access to this education. That is why democratization of education is meaningless if it is not free and readily accessible from primary to university level. And that is there is a major controversy. As an example, in our manifesto regarding the PTPTN, people say, and you know, the UMNO youth and UMNO leaders continue preaching to us, hectoring to us. Why Pakatan leaders are deemed so irresponsible as to encourage people to borrow and not pay? PTPTN is an example. Never mind the cow condo, never mind Perwaja, never mind the mass fiasco that you can borrow and steal without ever thinking of returning the funds. A short caveat to that, may I tell you this: there should not be retributive justice. Malice towards none. But no way can we excuse them if they are found to be stealing public funds, which means forgive, yes, forget, no. And I said it publicly, and I mean it. I've forgiven Rahim, no, I've forgiven Mahathir. But I will not allow petroleum contract to be monopolized by Mohsani's company. Now, PTPTN, computed by Rafizi and gang, will not exceed 6 billion ringgit. Revenue from petroleum and palm oil comes to about 150 billion ringgit a year. Spending on education at the cost of 6 billion ringgit a year would not lead the country to bankruptcy. But corruption, stealing, massive commissions, that would certainly be a drain of the national economy. So, without additional expenditure, just looking at the Auditor General's report, annual report by the Auditor General, suffice to suggest that leakages, excessive spending and corruption has caused a loss of about 20 billion ringgit a year. So if we have a government that's prudent, transparent, and not corrupt, I believe, insyaAllah, we can resolve most of the problems and issues that we have, particularly in relation to education. Jadi saya jawab dua persoalan ini sebagai dalam mukadimah ini untuk menjelaskan bahawa ianya tidak boleh dianggap hanya sekadar program popular. Kerana program pro rakyat itu mesti diketengahkan. Mengapa kita harus ambil sikap macam kapitalis par excellence, bahawa setiap kali ada dasar yang pro rakyat itu seolah salah? Kalau pro YTL, pro Syed Mokhtar, pro Genting, pro Ananda Krishnan, okey. Pro rakyat, populis. Jadi sebab itu saya betulkan salah tanggapan ini. Keduanya soal keupayaan kita berbelanja. Dan saya pernah jadi Menteri Keuangan 8 tahun. Saya tidak terlalu pintar, tapi saya tidak bodoh untuk memahami bahawa kita ada keupayaan kalau kita dapat urus ekonomi dengan cermat, dengan berhemat, dan elak daripada ketirisan, kebocoran, pembaziran, dan yang lebih parah, rasuah yang menular sebagai barang. Terima kasih.
I guess we'll go to the first part, or the second part of our session tonight, where I'll pose a few questions to Dr. Sri Anwar, and then I hope he could. These are general questions, basically. It's basically the underlying philosophy of Pakatan Rakyat. My first question is that, as you all know, that the Arab Spring has given so much hope for a better future. Unfortunately, the Brotherhood's new economic order does not challenge the arguments and assumptions of Mubarak's socio-economic structure in terms of market trade and giving priority to private sector and foreign investment. It is based on empowering that structure without corrupt practices. It basically concentrates on the 1% of the Brotherhood, which refers to the small ultra-wealth clique that benefits the new economic order. Now, how will PR ensure that the change it promised will not be of the same rhetoric as that of the Brotherhood, and that it will benefit the 99% of our population instead?
Arab Awakening, Arab Spring, and spent some time, particularly in Tunisia, meeting the MPs and the cabinet, the new cabinet in Tunisia, the invitation by Sheikh Qanusi. Unlike the Pakatan Rakyat experience, they came as a result of this turbulence in the Middle East. We came more prepared. We have accepted that the change and transition through the democratic process, assuming that we have fair, free elections. Because of that, we have crafted a relatively more elaborate economic agenda. And as far back as 2007, the framework in the name of Malaysian Economic Agenda to replace the new economic policy, and this was deemed to be extremely controversial. But we need competitiveness, which we have lost. We still need foreign direct investments. We support, as a matter of principle, market economy, privatization. But what's lacking in this government is the issue of good governance, of accountability. Because we lack that, we tend then to cast aspersion of blame on the principle of market economy. Now, market economy, we're accepting for very strong ideological left position, can be supported on condition you do express adequate concern and understanding on the notion of justice, well articulated by Amartya Sen, or John Rawls' distributive justice, which we term as affirmative action based on need, in place of affirmative action based on race. And worse, the assumption that the new economic policy, that's economic environment, will benefit the large number of Malays. We have debunked this thesis, suggesting that the new economic policy now is proven to enrich the family members and the cronies of UMNO. So we will have to depend on direct investments. Malaysia is a trading nation. What is lacking is there is clearly a neglect of the welfare of the workers, housing for the workers. I remember, Mr. Chairman, pardon me giving an example on our initial experiment privatization of TNB, LLN those days. The first year track record, very impressive. I think they registered about 400 million ringgit profit. So they came to the Minister of Finance then and showed a great relief and satisfaction. And of course expecting accolades from me. Yes, I did. But I did caution them. I said, now that the TNB is privatized, where is your public housing program for your workers? Where is the special education program initiative for your students? That's why we started University Tenaga. So I think this is what's lacking these days. You know, you privatize, and to quote Kit Siang, he said, as a result is no privatization, but the end result is piratisation. Yeah. And this is what's happening. You know, the IPP is a classic example. Of course, people say, well, Anwar, you're going to absorb yourself because you are Minister of Finance. But on record, Anwar Ibrahim is still alive. He was chairman of LLN. He opposed. I had to resolve the battle between him and EPU. This is not the Treasury decision. All privatization in this country decided by the Prime Minister's office on the recommendation of the Economic Planning Unit of the Prime Minister's Department. So I call up, what's understanding? Anwar Ibrahim, representing the TNB, suggested that the entire agreement is clearly not only biased, but cannot be defended because it is biased in favor of YTL those days. YTL, Malakov, Genting Sanyen, and Ananda Krishnan's PD Power. So you have actually one Malaysia there. With the Malay, with the Chinese and the Indian. Of course, we have ignored the Ibans and the Kadazans for a long time. So for the last 4 years in Parliament, we have been insisting. We did not oppose privatization, but the entire provision is anti-people because you actually provide an average 90 to 20 billion ringgit of subsidy to these rich companies, and the terms really, I mean, if not an exaggeration to say, is fraudulent in a sense. So when I met a group of investors and economists coordinated by the economist, they asked me, they said, Anwar, how do you then expect people to come in when you start talking about changing the terms of the old agreement? I said, no, the new government, when we take over, inshallah, will defend every single agreement, accepting for the fact that we have evidence to show that there is fraud, corrupt practice, or the agreement which is clearly not deemed to be fair and just. So I think that you certainly appreciate, because otherwise you expect us to defend every single law. So the problem is not privatization or market economy. The problem is unbridled power. If you understand Wall Street Journal, it's very interesting. Wall Street movement, Occupy Wall Street. It's interesting. Arab Spring, Occupy Wall Street comes about the same time. Arab Spring, people clamoring for freedom and reform. And Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, people cautioning against unbridled freedom, and particularly among the corporate elites, the complicity of corporate elites, Wall Street, and Capitol Hill, the political elite.